Namaste. This is once again Professor Dr. T.V. Subbarao from National Law School of India, University, Bangalore. Today, we would try to cover right to privacy, the din and controversy generated in recent times about right to privacy has led us to discuss more and more about this concept. On every important thing, much remains to be stated. Let us see, first of all, what is privacy and what do you mean by right to privacy? That the contours of the term privacy is difficult to define and it has elastic ambit and ambiguous import. It is generally defined as the state of being free from intrusion or disturbance in one's private life. What amounts to intrusion and what is private life? Again, they are subject to vague definitions. Privacy is the inner sanctum of a person or reservation of private space which is inviolable. Privacy allows every individual to be left alone as observed by Thomas Cooley of United States of America. Sir Edward Coke observed that the house of everyone is to him as his castle and fortress, as well for his defense against injury and violence as far as his repose. This was in the case of Peter Simeon versus Richard Gresham. Such observations you can also see in one of our celebrated judgments of Karaksi. Permissible limits of intrusion into privacy was discussed in England in the case of Murray versus Big Pictures. In general, we may say that it is a rightful claim of an individual to determine the extent to which he can share of himself with others. Thus, privacy is considered to be a valued and cherished basic human right. In the United States of America, privacy has been recognized and interpreted in a number of cases. If you look into Boyd versus United States, wherein it was observed that it is not the breaking of his doors or the rummaging of his drawers that constitute the essence of the offense, but it is the invasion of his indefensible right of personal security, personal liberty and private property. It is the invasion of this sacred right to privacy. In Griswold versus Connecticut, it was observed right to marital privacy emanated from penumbra of fundamental constitutional guarantees and rights in the Bill of Rights, which together create zones of privacy. Both these cases are often quoted by the Indian Supreme Court. In most of the countries, their respective constitutions do not expressly guarantee right to privacy, but recognize it through judicial interpretation. If you try to classify or mention about types of privacy, it is a very big list and inconclusive. In essence, we may be able to say it may be bodily privacy, spatial privacy, communicational privacy, proprietary privacy, intellectual privacy, decisional privacy, associational privacy, behavioral privacy, and informational privacy. If you refer to privacy as a constitutional imperative in India, we may have to understand the implications of privacy through Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. In fact, in the privacy case, they said it is a part of Article 21 as well as other fundamental freedoms. However, if we know the concept of Article 21 in its totality, you will be able to appreciate much about right to privacy. Look at Article 21. No person shall be deprived of his life or personal liberty except according to procedure established by law. Here, person may include even foreigners as well. So he should not be deprived of his life or personal liberty except according to procedure established by law. The citizens or non-citizens. The operative part of Article 21 revolves around the concept of what is life, what is personal liberty, and what is this procedure established by law. If you are able to appreciate these expressions, automatically it will be very easy to understand right to privacy. The first one is what is life. In order to understand these concepts, we may have to go through the evolution of judicial interpretation, starting from A.K. Gopalan's case up to Maneka Gandhi and afterwards. In Karak Singh versus State of Uttar Pradesh, the court has stated that life here is used something more than mere animal existence. The inhibition against its deprivation extends to all those limbs and faculties by which life is enjoyed. The provision of equally prohibits the mutation of body by amputation of an arm or leg or pulling out an egg or destruction of any other organ of the body through which the soul communicates with the outside world. When it came to Maneka Gandhi versus Union of India, the court said the right to life is not merely confined to physical existence. As we have noted in Karak Singh case, not merely animal existence. It includes to live with human dignity. An expanded version of life has been given in this case. And it is further explained in Francis Caroli versus Union Territory. The right to live is not confined to mechanical existence. The right to live is not confined to the protection of any faculty or limb through which life is enjoyed or soul is communicated with the outside world. But it also includes right to live with human dignity, as we have noted in Maneka Gandhi's case, to live with human dignity and all that goes along with it, namely the bare necessities such as adequate nutrition, clothing and shelter and facilities for reading, writing and commingling with fellow human beings. All these things go with the expression life. In Sunil Batra versus Delhi administration, once again it was underscored that right to life includes right to lead a healthy life so as to enjoy all faculties of the human body in prime condition. It would even include right to the protection of person's tradition, culture, heritage and all that gives meaning to man's life. Now we will see about personal liberty. At the first instance it was taken up in the case of A.K. Gopalan versus State of Madras. Because the word is liberty is qualified by the word personal, it is a narrower concept. The expression personal liberty did not include all that is implied in the term liberty. So interpreted, the expression personal liberty meant nothing more than liberty of the physical body, that is, freedom from arrest and detention, from false imprisonment and wrongful confinement. A narrower interpretation at that time. Article 19 had no application to laws depriving life or personal liberty because they are separately mentioned under Article 19, and liberty under Article 21 is the liberties other than Article 19. In Karan Singh versus State of Uttar Pradesh, the expression personal liberty, it is mentioned, is used in Article 21 as a compendious term to include within itself all varieties of all rights which go to make up personal liberty of a man other than those dealt with several clauses under Article 19 Clause 1. While Article 19 Clause 1 deals with particular species or attributes of that freedom, personal liberty in Article 21 takes and comprises of the residue. That was a specific thing that they have mentioned. In Maneka Gandhi versus Union of India, everything is changed. The court has stated the expression personal liberty in Article 21 is of the widest amplitude and it covers variety of rights which go to constitute personal liberty of a man, and some of them have been raised to the status of distinct fundamental rights and given additional protection under Article 19. This interpretation, if you can see, is different from A.K. Gopalan's case as well as Karan Singh case. The law must therefore now settled that Article 21 does not exclude Article 19, and that even if there is a law prescribing procedure for depriving a person of personal liberty, and there is a consequently no infringement of fundamental rights conferred by Article 21, such law insofar as it abridges or takes away fundamental right under Article 19 would have to meet the challenge of the article. So, a different interpretation has been given in Maneka Gandhi's case. Now let us discuss about the concept of the expression procedure established by law. Once again I remind you, Article 21 says, no person shall be deprived of his life or personal liberty except according to procedure established by law. What do you mean by that procedure established by law? In A.K. Gopalan versus State of Madras, giving literal interpretation and taking cue from the framers, the court held that the framers of the constitution deliberately adopted the expression procedure established by law, which was held to be more specific than American phrase due process of law. Here, I may take a bit deviation. In fact, Sir B.N. Rao had discussions with Justice Frankfurter in America. And at that time, the advice given was that we should avoid due process clause because it gives more power to the judiciary to sit as a even third chamber of the legislature. So here, again, in A.K. Gopalan's case, the court said the law was not used in the sense of due process of law. The law was not used in the sense of jus and lex. The expression did not mean principles of natural justice. The expression procedure established by law means procedure established by state-made law. Over. That is the interpretation given by procedure established by law. Look at Maneka Gandhi's case, the evolution of the interpretation. At present, it governs the issues. In order to comply with the mandate of Article 21, the mere prescription of procedure was not enough. Any procedure is not enough, but the procedure must be just, fair and reasonable and not arbitrary, fanciful or oppressive. The court added, natural justice is a great humanizing principle intended to invest law with fairness. In order that the procedure was just, fair and reasonable, it should conform to the principles of natural justice. Now with this expansive interpretation, the Supreme Court in fact recognized many unenumerated rights into Article 21, Article 19, Article 14. Elsewhere, while dealing with human rights and fundamental rights, I told you that 14, 19 and 21 articles, Article 14, Article 19, Article 21, they form into golden triangle. So, in this golden triangle, what is the place for privacy? Friends, initially, the Supreme Court was reluctant to recognize right to privacy as a part of fundamental right. If you see the cases, for example, MP Sharma versus Satish Chandra, you will find it was a 8-judge constitutional bench. And in Karak Singh versus State of Uttar Pradesh again, you will find it was 6-judge constitutional bench. In both the cases, they stated very clearly, privacy is not recognized as a part of fundamental right, but under different circumstances. Look at MP Sharma's case. It was the question of search and seizure. The petitioner questioned search and seizure under Criminal Procedure Code as violative of his right under 19(1)(f), right to acquire and hold and dispose of property. Now that is removed, and now that particular article is not there, 19(1)(f). Right to property, Article 31 also is removed by the Constitution, 44th Amendment Act of 1978. Now it is an ordinary constitutional right. So the petitioner challenged search and seizure under Article 19(1)(f) and Article 20 Clause 3. 20 Clause 3 clearly states, no person accused of any offence shall be compelled to be a witness against himself. That he must be an accused person, and when he is compelled, Article 20 Clause 3 is violated. So that is mainly the argument. The court made an observation that we should not bring in right to privacy under these articles. When the Constituent Assembly thought it fit not to recognize fundamental right to privacy, which is analogous to 4th Amendment to the American Constitution, the court said, we have no justification to import it. So clearly, the court said that nor is it legitimate to assume the constitutional protection under Article 20 Clause 3 would be defeated by the statutory provisions of searches and seizures. Search and seizure may be allowed, but they were not ready to recognize right to privacy under Article 21 or any other article for that matter. In Karak Singh case, the position was different. It was with regard to a regulation under Chapter 20 of UP Police Regulation, wherein it was permitted to have domiciliary visits to the houses of habitual offenders. He challenged it under Article 19(1)(d), right to move freely throughout the territory of India. His argument was, if there is domiciliary visit by the police people to his house, automatically his right to move freely throughout the territory of India is affected psychologically. And also he challenged it under Article 21, which we have noted already what it is. So the court declared unconstitutional Regulation 236 for the reason that if you want to deprive a person of his liberty under Article 21, there must be a procedure established by law. There was no backing of law to this regulation. So hence they held it is void. But under Article 19, the court said your psychological feelings will not be taken, only tangible things are envisaged under Article 19(1)(d). So while dealing with that case, the court pointed out the right of privacy is not guaranteed right under our Constitution, and therefore the attempt to ascertain the movements of an individual, which is merely a manner in which privacy is invaded, is not an infringement of fundamental right guaranteed by Part 3. Dissenting opinion of Justice Kokasubra was considered important, and in the recent privacy case, they have quoted it. He said, "It is true, our constitution does not expressly declare a right to privacy as a fundamental right, but the said right is an essential ingredient of personal liberty. Every democratic country sanctifies domestic life. It is expected to give him rest, physical happiness, peace of mind, and security. In the last resort, a person's house where he lives with his family is his castle." We have noted elsewhere the same expression. "It is his rampart against encroachment on his personal liberty." He quoted the pregnant words of that famous judge, Frankfurter, in Wolf versus Colorado, pointing out the importance of security of one's own privacy against arbitrary intrusion by the police could have no less application to an Indian home as to an American one. However, friends, you must remember that after a gap of several years, when you have seen the interpretation of Maneka Gandhi versus Union of India, the Supreme Court as well as some high courts variedly recognize right to privacy as a right recognized under Article 21. The Supreme Court decisions were delivered by smaller benches even, but nonetheless, these decisions were given after Maneka Gandhi's case. How far they are feasible or valid, we will discuss. In fact, all these decisions of the Supreme Court on privacy prior to privacy case, the court has stated in the privacy case that all of them they are valid. Look at Atto Shankar's case, R. Rajagopal versus State of Tamil Nadu, AR 1995 Supreme Court page number 264, wherein it was a question of right to publish autobiography, and when it was objected to, the court said only when it is published you can see whether it is a defamatory or not. If anything is published false or affecting right to privacy, they can take care of it. They can take action if any after publication, if it is found to be false. The court held right to privacy, that is right to be let alone. You see the concept also they have given is implicit under Article 21. A citizen has a right to safeguard the privacy of his own, his family, marriage, procreation, motherhood, childbearing, and education, among other matters. None can publish anything concerning the above matters without his consent, whether truthful or otherwise, and whether laudatory or critical. If one violates the above, he is violating the right and liable for damages. The exceptions, if any, are: number one, if any publication of such matter is based upon public record, including court record, it will be unobjectionable. If the publication relates to public official, as long as the criticism relates to the discharge of his official duties, even if it involves an element of untruth made after personal verification, it is no objection. The contempt power of the court and privileges of the legislature, they stand different footing. Look at State of Maharashtra versus Madhulkar Narayan's case. The court said even a woman of easy virtue was entitled to privacy. Similarly, People's Union for Civil Liberties versus Union of India, when there was a case of telephone tapping, the court held it that it is a serious invasion of privacy unless it is justified on particular or certain circumstances. Mr. X versus Hospital Z was an interesting case. The court has stated privacy is a part of Article 21, but it is not an absolute one. for prevention of crime, disorder, or protection of health, or morals, or protection of rights and freedoms of others, disclosing about HIV/AIDS of the appellant by the doctor is not violative of privacy of the appellant, because it was related to the marriage. The court said marriage is a sacred union, legally permissible, of two healthy bodies of opposite sexes. The matrimonial laws permit divorce if other party suffers from VD in communicable form. The lady with whom the patient is likely to be married is saved by the disclosure of the fact of HIV and AIDS. The right of the lady positively includes the right to be told that he is a victim of a dreadful disease in the communicable form. Right to lead a healthy life so as to enjoy all the faculties in prime condition is part of Article 21. The court added that there is a conflict between two fundamental rights. If there is a conflict between two fundamental rights, as in the present case, the right which would advance the public morality or public interest shall alone be enforced. Moral considerations cannot be kept at bay, and the judges are not expected to sit as mute spectators or structures of clay in the hall known as courtroom. Similarly, as we have noted earlier, the samples and records of a patient, they are already in the public domain, as in the present case. No privacy is invaded, and husband can seek the DNA test. In Surjit Singh versus Kanwaljit Kaur, the court said virginity test violates Article 21. In Sharda versus Dharmapal, in case of divorce, the matrimonial court can direct the parties to undergo medical examination. This was under Indian Lunacy Act, read with CPC. In People's Union for Civil Liberties versus Union of India, Section 14 of Prevention of Terrorism Act empowers the investigating officer to seek information. In this case, the court specifically stated journalists and lawyers did not have a sacrosanct right to withhold information as above on the grounds of ethics. However, while doing so, if the rights of others are violated, they can have legal course for redressal. In Javed versus State of Haryana, Haryana Panchayat Raj Act, more than 2 children disqualified from holding the post. The court held no privacy issue was involved. In Suchita Srivatsava versus Chandigarh administration, it was with regard to medical termination of pregnancy. The court recognized that personal liberty includes right of woman to make reproductive choices. She can refuse to participate in sexual act, can insist on use of contraceptive methods, or carry pregnancy to full term, give birth and raise the child. Act places a reasonable restrictions on such right. The crucial consideration is that a woman's right to privacy, dignity and bodily integrity, and they should be respected unless there is compelling state interest to the contrary. Now, we will enter into the crucial aspects of discussion which have caused more and more discourses with reference to privacy, Aadhaar, Article 377, 497 and so many other things. Let us first discuss about the first Justice K.S. Puttaswamy versus Union of India case. This decision was delivered on 24th August 2017. It is famously known as privacy case. This decision came as a sequel to the opinion of a bench of 3 judges of the Supreme Court, which, while considering the constitutional challenges to Aadhaar card scheme of the Union government, noted that the action of the government was questioned on the ground that it violates right to privacy. At that juncture, the Attorney General for India urged the court that right to privacy was doubted in view of the opinion expressed by the Supreme Court, MP Sharma versus Satish Chandra, which was rendered by 8 judges we have noted, and in Karak Singh case, wherein 6 judges were there. In both the cases, they refused to recognize privacy as a part of fundamental rights. So in such a situation, the court constituted 9-member bench. Justice D.Y. Chandrachud, who delivered the judgment on behalf of Chief Justice Jagdish Singh Kekar at that time, Justice R.K. Agarwal, Justice Abdul Nazir, whereas Justice Chalmeshwar, Justice Bobde, Justice Sapre, Justice Nariman, Justice Kaul, they all delivered separate but concurrent judgments. They determined whether right to privacy is protected right under Part 3 of the Constitution. In view of the lengthy judgment, let us first note the order of the court, what it has stated. Then slowly we will discuss about each judgment of the judges. Now the order of the court says, firstly, the decision in MP Sharma, which holds that right to privacy is not protected by the Constitution, stands overruled. Second point, the decision in Karak Singh case, to the extent that it holds that the right to privacy is not protected by the Constitution, stands overruled. So both MP Sharma and Karak Singh cases, insofar as not recognizing right to privacy, they are overruled. The third point and important point is that the right to privacy is protected as an intrinsic part of right to life and personal liberty under Article 21. Now you will understand why we have discussed about life, why we have discussed about personal liberty, why we have discussed about procedure established by law, while discussing this issue of privacy. The right to privacy is protected as an intrinsic part of the right to life and personal liberty under Article 21 and as a part of the freedoms guaranteed by Part 3 of the Constitution. They did not specifically say which freedom, but in general they have stated as a part of freedoms guaranteed by Part 3 of the Constitution. And also, most importantly, the Supreme Court has stated decisions subsequent to Karak Singh case, all those decisions which we have noted about privacy, which have enunciated the position in point number 3 above, lay down the correct position of law, even though those judgments were given by smaller benches. The cases which we have noted, all of them, they are approved with this particular point. These are the 4 important points which the Supreme Court has stated while delivering the judgment. This is the order of the court. Now look at what Chandrachud opined. We are only briefly looking into it to see whether they have given the parameters of intrusion, how far you can intrude into privacy, and what is privacy. Justice Chandrachud opined privacy has both positive and negative content. The negative content restrains the state from committing an intrusion upon the life and personal liberty of a citizen. Its positive content imposes an obligation on the state to take all necessary measures to protect privacy of the individual. By implication here, you should see that Article 21, even if it is including right to privacy, it is only against state action. Whereas for private individual, if he is invading the privacy of others, there should be a separate legislation data protection laws, they are envisaged and law is considered, bill is prepared. All these things we will discuss. So, state to take all necessary measures to protect privacy of the individual. He has also referred to informational privacy as a facet of right to privacy, and he exhorted the government to evolve strong regime for data protection. Look at Justice Chalmester's conscious observation. He observed the implications arising from the scheme of constitution are constitution's dark matter. So we are inferring everything by implication. So he considers them as constitution's dark matter and are as important as the express stipulations in the text. The principle laid down by the court in Keshavananda Bharati's case, that the basic structure of the constitution cannot be abrogated, is the most outstanding and brilliant expression of the dark matter. The reason is that basic structure, the expression, is not specifically mentioned in anywhere in the constitution. By implication, in Keshavananda Bharati's case, they brought this doctrine. So, he observed that it is a brilliant expression of the dark matter and is a part of the constitution, though there is nothing in the text suggesting that principle. He added that privacy has three aspects: repose, sanctuary, intimate decision. All these things have to be borne in mind while discussing privacy, that is repose, sanctuary and intimate decision. Justice Bobde, while making jurisprudential exposition of privacy, observed, privacy with which we are here concerned eminently qualifies as an inalienable right, natural right, intimately connected to two values whose protection is a matter of universal moral agreement: the innate dignity and autonomy of a man. Justice Nariman, he observed, if a person was to paste on Facebook vital information about himself or herself, such information being in the public domain could not possibly claim it as a privacy right after such a disclosure. But in pursuance of statutory requirement, if certain details need to be given for the concerned statutory purpose, then such details would certainly affect the right of privacy, but would on balance pass muster as the state action concerned has sufficient inbuilt safeguards to protect the right. He was canvassing that the fact that such information cannot be disseminated to anyone else, save on compelling grounds of public interest. Look at the judgment of Sanjay Krishna Kaul, who referred data protection at length. He opines the growth and development of technology has created new instruments for the possible invasion of privacy by the state, including through surveillance, profiling, and data collection and processing. These aspects have to be balanced as against privacy, he cautioned it, underscoring the importance of protecting the right to privacy as against non-state actors, as I was telling you. Through regulations, he said, knowledge about a person gives a power over that person. The personal data collected is capable of affecting representations, influencing decision-making process and shaping behavior. It can be used as a tool to exercise control over us, like the Big Brother state exercised. This can have a stultifying effect on expression of dissent and difference of opinion, which no democracy can afford. He opines the impact of digital age results in information on the internet being permanent. Humans forget, but internet does not forget and does not let humans forget. Any endeavor to remove information from the internet does not result in its obliteration. The footprints remain. It is that said, in the digital world, preservation is the norm and forgetting a struggle. A perusal of the judgment, though no doubt recognizes right to privacy, it also states permissible limits of invasion over privacy. The permissible limits, as against the state only we are discussing, there should be existence of law. Number two, a legitimate state interest should be involved. And the third one is, such a law should be passing the test of proportionality. Existence of law, legitimate state interest, and test of proportionality. These three shall be borne in mind while invading privacy. Next important case, second Puttaswamy's case. This is famously known as Aadhaar case, the original one which we were discussing. On 26th September 2018, the Supreme Court of India delivered this judgment. It is only 5-judge constitution bench that it is divided into 4:1. Why 5 judges? The reason is 9-member bench definitively laid foundation for right to privacy. Now its implications only have to be discussed. The majority upheld the constitutionality of Aadhaar scheme. Of course, they laid certain limitations over it. Certain provisions were read down, one provision was struck down, so like that it was discussed. The dissenting opinion was delivered by Justice D.Y. Chandrachud, holding that Aadhaar program in its entirety should be struck down as unconstitutional. This is the gist. The major question was whether the Aadhaar bill that was introduced in the parliament, is it a money bill? Is it constitutionally valid? These are the two questions one has to answer along with the implications of Aadhaar. As I have told you, when Aadhaar scheme was sought to be implemented, multitude of writ petitions were filed and the Aadhaar scheme was assailed. At that time it was not an act. Aadhaar scheme primarily challenged on the ground that it violates right to privacy, which is a facet of fundamental rights enshrined in Article 21. At that time, the 9-member bench decision was not there. Counter affidavit were filed by the Union of India saying that right to privacy is not a fundamental right as stated in MP Sharma's case as well as Kharak Singh case. So if you do not refer to that case and judgment is given contrary, it will be per incuriam, ignoring important aspects of the provisions or of the law declared by the court. So they have referred it to 9-member bench, which we have noted with reference to first Puttaswamy's case. Here the challenge was the Aadhaar Target Delivery Financial and Other Subsidies, Benefits and Services Bill of 2016, subsequently passed by the legislature, became Act in 2016, and you must note that it was introduced as money bill. Inter alia, it provided for the establishment of Unique Identification Authority of India, which was there already under the scheme, issuance of Aadhaar numbers, which were already there under the scheme, maintenance and updating of information in the Central Identities Data Repository, issues pertaining to security, privacy, confidentiality of information, as well as offences and penalties for contravention of relevant statutory provisions. When you look at the avowed objectives of Aadhaar as provided in the preamble of the Act, This is an act to provide for as a good governance, efficient, transparent and targeted delivery of subsidies, benefits and services. Carefully see there. The expenditure for which is incurred from the Consolidated Fund of India to individuals residing in India through assigning of UI numbers to such individuals and for matters connected therewith and incidental thereto. Several regulations were also challenged, as I have enumerated. The argument was that the provisions of Aadhaar Act are perceived by the petitioners as giving away vital information about the residents to the state, not only in the form of biometric, but also about the movement as well as varied kinds of transactions which a resident would enter into from time to time. The threat is in the form of profiling citizens by the state on one hand and misuse thereof by private agencies, whether it is enrolling agency or requesting agency or even private agencies. Justice Sikri, which has concurrence of Chief Justice Misra and Justice Khanwilkar, has read down some provisions as I have told you, but he held in general the act is valid significantly, but the main sections 33, 47 and 57 and upheld were struck down and upheld the other provisions. Look at A.K. Sikri's judgment. He said it is better to be unique than the best, because being the best makes you the number one, but being unique makes you the only one. He said the architecture of Aadhaar as well as the provisions of Aadhaar Act do not create surveillance of the state because of the safeguards provided. The court suggested, of course, to bring out a robust data protecting regime in the form of an enactment on the basis of Justice B.N. Krishna committee report. That is being undertaken now, and we hope that a legislation will be passed. As I have told you, the judgment authored by Justice A.K. Sikri had read down some provisions of Aadhaar Act, struck down few, but significant ones, mainly 33, clause 2, 47 and 57, and upheld the rest. On the question whether the above act violates right to privacy under Article 21, the court said all matters pertaining to an individual do not qualify for an inherent part of right to privacy. Only those matters over which there would be a reasonable expectation of privacy that are protected under Article 21. So he has qualified right to privacy under Article 21. The court is also the opinion that the triple test laid down, as we have noted elsewhere, if you remember, triple test, after reading the judgment of privacy, I made out triple test there included. If the triple test laid down in order to judge the reasonableness of the invasion to privacy has been made, the act is valid. Aadhaar scheme is backed by an enactment. There is state interest, all these things, and it is for the purpose of social benefit schemes for the community at large. The court further held the rationale behind Section 7 lies in ensuring targeted delivery of services and benefits, and then it also draws subsidies from Consolidated Fund of India. The court also finds that Aadhaar Act meets the test of proportionality, as I was telling you. For the enrollment of children, of course, the court said it would be essential to have the consent of the parents or guardians. Insofar as the school admission of children is concerned, the requirement of Aadhaar would not be compulsory, as it is neither a service nor subsidy. Section 2, Clause D, which pertains to authentication of records. Such records would not include metadata as mentioned in the regulation 26C of the Aadhaar. Therefore, this provision in the present form is struck down. Insofar as section 2B is concerned, which defines resident, the court directed that government should take suitable measure to ensure that illegal immigrants are not able to take such benefits. And also, it has stated retention of data beyond the period of 6 months is impermissible. Section 33 clause 1 of the Act prohibits disclosure of information, and that should be treaded down with the clarification that an individual whose information is sought to be released shall be afforded an opportunity first of hearing, and he shall also have the right to challenge such an order passed by approaching the High Court. Insofar as section 33 clause 2 is concerned, it was held that disclosure of information in the interest of national security cannot be faulted with, but officer to decide should not be at the level of joint secretary. In order to avoid any possible misuse, a judicial officer, preferably a sitting High Court judge, should also be associated with. Insofar as section 47 of the Act is concerned, which provides for the cognizance of offence only on complaint made by the authority or any officer or person authorized by it is concerned, it needs a suitable amendment to include the provision for filing such a complaint by an individual or victim as well whose right is violated. Insofar as part of section 57 is concerned, in the present form, it is susceptible for misuse. Thus, this part of the provision, which enables body, corporate and individuals also to seek authentication, that too on the basis of contract between the individual and such body, corporate or person, would impinge upon the right to privacy of individuals. This part of the section thus declared unconstitutional. Aadhaar Act meets the concept of limited government, good governance and constitutional trust, which the objective of the Act says. He also held that Aadhaar bill shall be considered as money bill and hence valid. In these 18 points, the gist of judgment of Justice Sikri has been given. Now look at the dissenting opinion of Dr. Justice Dhananjay Y. Chandrachud. He opined in its current form, the Aadhaar framework does not sufficiently assuage the concerns that have arisen from the operation of the project, hence unconstitutional. Secondly, the important thing he said is that Aadhaar Act is declared unconstitutional for failing to meet the necessary requirements to have been certified as many bill as mentioned under Article 110 Clause 1. Doctrine of pith and substance cannot be invoked in such circumstances according to Justice Chandrachud. The regulations framed subsequently under the Aadhaar Act also do not provide for a robust mechanism on how to get informed consent, and they should be obtained from the residents before collecting their biometric data. The Aadhaar Act and regulations are bereft of the procedure through which an individual can access information related to his or her authentication record. Section 29, Clause 1 and 2 of the Act create a distinction between two classes of persons of information: core biometric information and identity information, which are integral to individual identity and require equal protection. Section 29, Clause 4 suffers from overbreadth, as it gives wide discretionary power to UDAI to publish, display or post core biometric information of an individual for purposes specified by the regulation. Section 2G, J, K, T suffer from overbreadth, as these can lead to an invasive collection of biological attributes. The Aadhaar program violates essential norms pertaining to informational privacy, self-determination and data protection. The right is under a constitutional obligation to safeguard the dignity of its citizens. Biometric technology, which is the core of Aadhaar program, is probabilistic in nature, leading to authentication failures. These authentication failures have led to denial of the rights and legal entitlements. He added in his dissenting opinion that constitutional guarantees cannot be subjected to vicissitudes of technology, denial of benefits arising out of any social security schemes, which promote socio-economic rights of citizens, is violative of human dignity and impermissible under the constitutional scheme. He also added the violation of fundamental rights resulting from the Aadhaar scheme were tested on the touchstone of proportionality. The measures adopted by the respondent failed to satisfy the test of necessity and proportionality. Referring to section 47, he said, a court can take cognizance of an offence punishable under the Act only on complaint made by UDAI or any other officer authorized by it. Section 47 is arbitrary as it fails to provide mechanism to individual to seek efficacious remedies for violation of their right to privacy. Further, section 23, clause 2, subclause S of the Act requires UIDAI to establish grievance redressal mechanism, making the authority which is administering the project and also responsible for providing a grievance redressal mechanism for grievances arising from that project severely compromises the independence of the grievance redressal body. In the absence of independent regulatory monitoring framework, he said Aadhaar Act cannot be sustained. And violative of Article 14, allowing private entities to use Aadhaar numbers under section 57 is another one. He said it violates Article 14 and 21. Section 7 also suffers from overbreadth. He observed the broad definitions that are given, they violate the principles of the Constitution. Finally, Justice Chandrachud held that the entire Aadhaar program since 2019 suffers from constitutional infirmities and violations of fundamental rights. The enactments, that is the Aadhaar Act, will not save the Aadhaar project. The rules and regulations framed under it, they are all unconstitutional. It may be noted that once he stated it is not a money bill, automatically the whole act collapses. Ashok Bhushan, Justice, almost agreed with Justice Sikri. What are the implications of privacy case? And we have also noted the first implication, Aadhaar case. What are the other implications? You can see after privacy case only, this common cause, a registered society versus Union of India came. It permitted passive euthanasia under certain circumstances, that is one thing. Permitted living wills, a development over Aruna's Shambhag's case. And also the procedure was further prescribed, expanding the safeguards. If you see Navjot Singh versus Union of India, you will find that a part of section 377 IPC was struck down. So now, with consent, if they wanted to live together, nobody could question it. That is one part of section 377 was struck down. In Joseph Shine versus Union of India, which was delivered on 27 September 2018, a 5-judge constitutional bench also struck down totally section 497 of Indian Penal Code, read with the procedural aspects, which gives proprietary right over the wife to husband. It was considered to be violative of Constitution. These are some of the implications. One implication which we are going to see is that data protection law. Data protection is slightly different from data privacy. Data protection is about securing data against unauthorized access. Data privacy is about authorized access. Another way to look at it, this is data protection is essentially a technical issue, while data privacy is a legal one. The bill for data protection is pending and hopefully it will be passed. Thank you very much.